Good morning, everybody. What a great event. It's great to be here with all of you. So good morning again. Thank you all for being here. I wanted to say just congratulations to all of you for taking the time to be a part of an event like this. It's certainly worthwhile and worth all of our time to talk about women and empowering women. And I'm glad and really honored that Wendy let me be a part of it. So our panel today is going to be Sustainable Investing, Celebrating Governments Who Collaborate with Entrepreneurs. And we have a really esteemed panel right in here. I had the privilege of speaking with these ladies ahead of time. They are very dynamic, very vocal, and have some very strong and informed opinions. A lot of people have strong opinions, not always informed, about this topic. And so I'm going to introduce them right now, and they are certainly going to drive this conversation. I'm very glad to be along for the ride. So, to my right, Leah Sullivan, General Partner, Fuel Capital, and founder of TaskRabbit. That's a marketplace for freelance labor. Don't hold your applause. You can clap. Francine LeFrak, founder visionary of Same Sky, chair Harvard Kennedy School of Women's Leadership Board, and founder of LeFrak Productions, a content creation company. And Stephanie Newby, founder of Golden Seeds, an early stage investment firm for women-led companies. So we're going to get right into it. Again, we did have a conversation ahead of time, so we're going to jumpstart some of the preliminary stuff and get right into the meat of this. I'm going to start with you, Francine. You said a phrase that really resonated with me. A hand up, not a handout. Can you kind of expand on that?
Well, I've had the privilege, and 11 years ago I started to work with genocide surviving women who had been raped during the Rwandan genocide and had developed HIV. The UN estimates 250,000 women were raped during the genocide and 70% became HIV positive. When I met these women, they were literally waiting to die and planning for their death and what would happen to their children. So I came up with something I thought was so important, which was the concept of a hand up, not a handout. Because talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. And if I could provide these women with an opportunity, then I would be able to find a way to give them dignity and confidence and work. So I started with a jewelry company called Same Sky. These women made the jewelry that I'm wearing, and they're incredibly talented with their hands. And the whole idea was to display their talent and give them their life back. So that's what a hand up, not a handout means.
Excellent, excellent. Certainly worthy of applause. So speaking of, just kind of building on the idea that talent's everywhere and opportunity is not everywhere, Leah, you said a stat that really amazed me. Only 2% of venture capital goes to female founders.
Yes, it's kind of an astounding, depressing statistic, isn't it? But it's true. So, as the founder of TaskRabbit, I was lucky enough to be in that 2%. It was not easy. I don't think it's easy for any entrepreneur to raise capital from investors. But I know that there's many more women out there that have ideas, that have the talent, but don't have the opportunity to connect with investors to get capital. And so now as an investor myself at Fuel Capital, one of the motivations we really have is to really increase the number of companies we look at, the number of women-led companies we look at, the number of minority-owned companies we looked at, and just try to move those numbers. And I think it really does start with the people that control the money. And so for me, after a decade of being a founder and an entrepreneur, now being able to move over to the investor side and actually control that money is pretty exciting.
Very exciting.
I wanted to say that less than 2% for minority women. Absolutely. Because we work with a lot of minority women, and the chance they have to raise capital is astoundingly low. Yeah. So it's even worse for them.
Certainly a very important distinction there. I want to turn over to you, Stephanie. Speaking of these big financial organizations, you had a long history at JP Morgan. Can we just talk about something you said to me, the difference between microfinance and macrofinance and women?
Well, my career did start on Wall Street, so I worked there for 15 years and was an entrepreneur, so perhaps got some early taste of that. But when I decided to start Golden Seeds and I told people I was going to invest in women entrepreneurs, the immediate response was people starting to talk about microfinance. And it really bemused me for a while, and then I realized that when people think helping women entrepreneurs or investing in women entrepreneurs, they immediately go to very small businesses. And what I had decided to do was help women who were looking for venture capital that were growing technology businesses and life sciences businesses, and seeing that 2%. To do something about it. And so I had to very quickly change what I was saying and talk about women who were seeking venture capital to grow really large companies, to just change that dialogue.
Great. Over the last year or so, we've seen a lot of institutional investors push for more women to be involved in corporate boards. What do you think it's going to take for more women to get some of this capital, to start their own businesses? And as you said, not just microfinance, but bigger funding.
So, at Golden Seeds, we started 15 years ago, and so I'll distinguish a little bit between seed stage investing, which is typically coming from friends and family initially, and then the next stage and the first professional capital is angel investors. And so at that, even 15 years ago, that number was 2% of women entrepreneurs getting seed stage financing. And interestingly, back then, about 2% of the angel investors in the country were women. So at Golden Seeds, we put in place training programs to teach women about who had the capacity to become angel investors, but to teach them how to value early stage companies, how to do due diligence on an early stage company, how to become a board member of an early stage company, and the impact of dilution and follow-on financing and everything you needed to know to really become comfortable with the idea of taking this risk, because it is risky capital. As a result, today, 15 years later, there are about 25% women angel investors. And interestingly, nowadays in that seed stage area, about 25% of the people getting that capital are women entrepreneurs. This is a very direct correlation, and I do think that a lot of this is exposure, opportunity, and education, because, one of my mythbusters is that women don't like to take risk. That's real bullshit, as many of the people in this room probably know. And my understanding of this is that women want to understand what they're getting into, but once they understand it, they'll take as much risk as the next person.
Yeah, and just to build on that, I think, the work that you've done at Golden Seeds is incredible and has absolutely moved the needle. And then as you sort of follow the money up the chain, meaning after they graduate from seed stage, they have to raise more capital, Series A, Series B, Series C, right? We need female investors at every single stage of that pipeline. Otherwise, female founders can get stuck. They can have a really successful business and raise a seed round of funding, maybe raise a Series A, and then go out and pitch Series B investors that just don't get it. They just don't get their business. And then it's like a full stop. It's like hitting the wall. I experienced some of that with TaskRabbit, honestly. And so if you follow the money all the way up the chain, you really need to have representation and diversity at every single point of failure. Only 9% of general partners in venture capital funds institutionalized are women. 9%. And so there's a lot of work to do there. If you take it up another level and you think about how do these funds get funded, right? At Fuel Capital, we raise our money from endowments, from family offices, from institutions, hospitals. Those people have to care that they're investing in a diverse set of managers, of fund managers. Because when you have a diverse set of fund managers, that drives returns. And there are proven statistics that a diverse set of fund managers, a diverse set of management team will drive better returns. And so, it comes down to the numbers across the board. But if you follow the capital all the way, sort of to the top, there's a lot of work to be done.
Leah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I learned something pretty scary recently, which is how do we get more, how do emerging venture capital funds get created. And there are funds allocated to emerging managers. So you think, oh, good, I can get some of that. And I'm sure you've experienced this. But about over 99% of that capital coming from institutional investors that's flagged for emerging managers actually goes to what they call lift-out teams. So what they will invest in is a team of people that have been working for 10 years or more in a private equity firm or a venture capital firm that have got an investment track record, are already successful. Only 9% of those might have a woman in them, and therefore there is sort of a perpetuating cycle there, that those lift-out teams are going to become the new VCs, and they're going to get over 99% of that institutional capital that's flagged for emerging managers.
Excellent.
But I think there's a real problem with getting women in the C-suites. Why we have so few women CEOs in Fortune 500 companies. And part of it, I think, is women helping other women rise. And they have to start at a very low level to give women the confidence and build them up and make them feel that they're ready to take on those kind of roles. Because there's a huge gap in terms of top executive positions that are ready for that management. And on boards, I believe there should be quotas. It's worked so well in other countries, but I believe in the 30% club, that there should be at least 3 women on every public company board.
Actually, it was July of this year that the last Fortune 500 company did appoint a woman to their board. And this is probably, I'd say, almost 10 years after some of those Nordic countries that led the way with quotas, started making a point about it.
Excellent. So just a little audience participation. Who here has ever heard of Specs? Anybody ever heard of that company? Hand up. Wearing them right now. I think that's what's often pointed to as an example of a woman-founded business, a female entrepreneur that really pursued her dream. And I've often heard the founder talk about just some of the barriers that she experienced along her way to turning this company into the juggernaut that it is now. So where's this understanding gap coming from? I mean, it seems like we understand that more diverse companies perform better and more diverse boards perform better. Why isn't the funding going to a more diverse group of people, especially women?
Because when Sarah Blakely walks in to pitch a room full of male investors, they don't get it. And they may look at the numbers and say, like, wow, this actually looks like it could be a business. But let me go home and ask my wife about it. Or let me ask, the receptionist and see what she thinks. But they just don't understand. And investors are human, right? Like, we like to invest in things that we understand. And so it just comes down to a miss on the vision.
Well, Stephanie, 1 second, just really quick. What are you saying they don't understand? Because we all know that women are at least half the population, and of course, there's many women in here who spend money on things. So where's the gap? Where's the understanding gap? Okay, Stephanie, jump in.
So I'll be magnanimous here and suggest that it's unconscious bias. And Francine, I see you shaking your head, which is great, because I'm saying it with my through very thin closed teeth. But McKinsey recently did a very interesting study where they analysed questions posed to women entrepreneurs when they were pitching venture capitalists, and compared them with the questions posed to male entrepreneurs when they were pitching. And they categorized those questions into 2 buckets. One was, I don't remember the exact word, but I think it was something like retracting sort of negative questions, and the others were more expanding questions. And so a negative question might, well, let's start with the expanding question. Male entrepreneur sits in front and you say, well, how big can you grow this business? Female entrepreneur comes in, they say, when are you going to get to cash flow break even? And that was really interesting data that came out that I think demonstrates unconscious bias. So making these kinds of research results available, because I think that what we all have to do in many situations is just become more conscious and be deliberate about some of these choices, because it's not going to happen organically.
Francine, I don't want to hold you back.
About
please, go ahead.
Unconscious bias. So there was a problem in the LA Symphony Orchestra where they only had 14% women musicians. So they decided to do blind auditions. And this is some of the work that we do at the Kennedy School. So after the blind auditions, they got up to 40% women. So the same blind audition went to Nigeria, and they only had 17% women, and they couldn't get the numbers up even with the blind auditions. And do you know what the problem was? It was the unconscious bias that started with the clicking of the high heels. So they had to do barefoot auditions, and I'm happy to tell you that 45% of the orchestra in Nigeria is women. But talk about unconscious bias, if that doesn't... Now, you know your phone, your iPhone, was designed for a man. If you go on the New York subway and you hear, next stop 42nd Street, it's a woman's voice. But don't stand near the doors. Or if you see something, say something, it's a man's voice. Because men are the authority. We learn at a very young age, even in textbooks, that men are the authority voices and women are the ones to give us information. We have a problem with AI because AI has been driven by men. So the same problem that we've had with unconscious bias in people is the same with robots. So we've really got to get into this.
Unconscious bias in robots. I don't think I've ever heard that phrase before. So I think we want to flip it just a bit to get your insight on things. So besides taking off your high heels when you walk into an audition, what can women do to make themselves more marketable, to get some of that venture capital and to kind of get around these obstacles?
I can share from my experience. I raised over $50 million in venture capital funding. I think I went in to each one of those meetings just kind of guns blazing, not holding back, and not really thinking about the fact that there might be some unconscious bias, that, I was passionate about my business. I am passionate about my business. And I just had the attitude I wasn't going to let anything hold me back. And I think for me, as I look back and think about that time, I probably had to be, double or triple sort of just motivated and empowered and out there than maybe a typical entrepreneur would be, just to kind of break through those barriers and really connect with the investors. I'll also say that I feel like TaskRabbit as a business is a type of business that appeals to both men and women in a similar way. And so I almost had a little bit of advantage as a female founder, because when I did talk about TaskRabbit to investors, they did understand it. But I look at companies like Katrina Lake, the founder of Stitch Fix, is a friend, $1 billion business, had a terrible time raising money for that company. And it comes down to like what actually resonates with the investors in the room. So how can you get your business to resonate with them?
Can I jump in? Because I do think that having worked on Wall Street and in financial services for the first half of my career, I was conscious. We were clear that we had to break down a lot of barriers, and women were trying all sorts of things to do that. And so I got into this world of venture capital and private equity, and I thought, gee, we're so far behind where Wall Street was. And so but I do think some of those things worked. One is make sure that you're really prepared. You've got to know your numbers. You have to know, exactly who you're talking to, why they might be interested. You've got to appeal to that. And also you've occasionally got to be audacious and call them out and just say, look, use your sense of humor. I know I'm a woman. I know you haven't invested in any women before. Let me be your first. Just, put on the table some of the things that might be otherwise just hidden.
Francine, do you have any input?
Well, my input is the practical one. Believe in yourself. Never give up. Be excellent. And make sure nothing will stop you, because that's how we win, by persistence. And these two women are proof of it.
Excellent. So we are starting to run low on time. Just one takeaway that you want people to walk away with from this panel. Not everybody at once.
Well, just knowing that this is about sustainable investing, I want to go back to what Leah said, which is we need more women to be willing to take risks, to support each other. If you have the capacity to become an investor, learn about it, support women entrepreneurs. They're great investments. They return higher. There are higher returns from them. They produce greater revenues when they get the money.
The greatest investment that I made was investing in women all the way at the bottom, because when you see them rise and it transfers to their family and it transfers to their security and their communities, the kind of bang for your buck is just remarkable.
And I think for me, I would just say, I know that when I was starting a company, sometimes I felt like I was so paralyzed by searching for perfection. And I think as women, many times we search for perfection before we move forward. And I just say, throw perfection out the window and just go for it.
Excellent, excellent. So everybody here has pretty much heard of Spanx. Could you guys give us maybe one other women-started business or woman-founded business?
I have a million of them. Stitch Fix is an amazing business, a $1 billion company, went public this year. We're investors in a lot of early-stage female-led companies, as I'm sure you are as well. One that I'll just plug here today, because I think you guys will love it, is called Argent. And it's this amazing founder named Sally who's reinventing women's workwear. Suits, blazers, pantsuits. Hillary Clinton wears them. Check it out.
So
Argent.
I'm going to call out Cognition Therapeutics. Susan Catalano is the founder and chief scientific officer, and she's genuinely solving the Alzheimer's problem by reversing the disease in her early human trials. We've been financing her for more than 10 years. And Christina Lamponod, who has started her second successful battery company with fantastic battery technology to help with the transference of away from fossil fuels to renewable energies.
Francine, do you have one you want to give?
Gosh, I can't think of one now, but...
Tell us about because after the jewelry you did the other thing.
Oh, well, I started training women, and we just finished a training in Birmingham, Alabama, of women entrepreneurs that want to be artisans. So they have jobs, but they spent weekends learning business plans and how to become their own artisans and start their own businesses online and with friends. And then we did a marketplace. And again, the transformation of those women to feeling insecure, feeling like they didn't have a network, but feeling so great afterwards that they were going to be courageous and start their own businesses online with sewing and using their hands and different businesses. So it's very exciting to see on that level. Thanks.
All right. Very excited. We're going to have to end the conversation there, but we want to thank Stephanie Newby, Leah Sullivan, and Francine LeFrak for their time and their insight.